Warm greetings from India. I am Nisha Nair, Associate Professor at Jindal Global Law School, and it is my pleasure to moderate the panel discussion on the theme of inclusivity and equity, applying the formula in lifelong learning to achieve Sustainable Development Goal 4 at the 5-day virtual World University Summit on Universities of the Future, Building Institutional Resilience, Social Responsibility, and Community Impact in G20 countries, jointly organized by the Jindal Global Center for G20 Studies and the International Institute for Higher Education Research and Capacity Building of OP Jindal Global University. It is my honor to introduce the distinguished panel of speakers we have with us today, Professor Sungho Kang, President, History NGO Forum of Peace in East Asia, South Korea. Professor Kang has decades of experience engaging in NGO and civil society programs, allowing him the opportunity to contribute to the development of the Korean civil society. He organized the 1999 Seoul International Conference of NGOs as its program director, which was the first worldwide NGO conference held in South Korea by Kyung University and UN-associated NGOs. Concurrently, he is leading the History NGO Forum for Peace in East Asia as its co-president while promoting historical reconciliation, peace building, and youth activism in East Asia. Our next panelist is Professor Nugraha Putra, Assistant Professor, Jindal Global Law School, OP Jindal Global University, India. Dr. Putra holds a Doctor of Juridical Science from Indiana University, Maurer School of Law, United States. His dissertation research was carried out by conducting comparative approaches among several countries by analyzing the criminal defamation laws and cases, identifying best practices for free speech and democracy. The next distinguished speaker on our panel is Professor Edward Peck, Vice Chancellor and President, Nottingham Trent University, UK. Professor Peck joined Nottingham Trent University as Vice Chancellor in August 2014. His academic interests encompass public policy and organizational leadership, and he is a fellow of the UK Academy of Social Sciences. Professor Peck is a trustee of the Universities and Colleges Employees Association and Deputy Chair of the Universities and Colleges Admissions Services. He was a member of the UK government's Post-18 Fees and Funding Review Panel. In May 2022, he was appointed as the Department for Education's initial student support champion. In July 2020, he was appointed Deputy Lieutenant of Nottinghamshire and was made a commander of the British Empire in the 2021 New Year Honours List for services to higher education. And our fourth panelist is Professor Nidhi S. Sabharwal, Associate Professor, Center for Policy Research in Higher Education, National Institute of Educational Planning and Administration, India. Dr. Sabharwal also holds the position of Associate Professor in the Department of Educational Studies at the University of Warwick. Dr. Sabharwal has also served as the Director of the Indian Institute of Dalit Studies. She has conducted extensive research on development concerns of the poor, especially the scheduled caste groups. She has studied intergroup inequalities across human development indicators, focusing on the role of caste and gender-based discrimination in market and non-market institutions, diversity and discrimination within higher educational institutions, midday meal and Anganwadi programs, and social protection and affirmative action policies. Her current research focuses on access, student diversity, and equity in higher education. I welcome and thank the esteemed speakers for accepting our invitation to be a part of this panel. The theme of this panel discussion is inclusivity and equity, applying the formula in lifelong learning to achieve Sustainable Development Goal 4. Now, lifelong learning encompasses formal and informal learning opportunities that take place throughout individuals' lifetime with the goal of promoting overall development. It is essential for adaptability, social connection, and improved quality of life. It is an ongoing process that should be embraced and prioritized throughout one's life. However, access to lifelong learning is often limited for marginalized populations, including low-income communities, women, other genders, and people with disabilities. There are significant challenges when inclusivity and equity are applied in lifelong learning process. This is because many students face barriers in accessing education, which is limited in terms of financial constraints, everyday discrimination, and inadequate infrastructure and resources. When speaking of inclusivity and equity, the foremost challenge in achieving SDG Goal 4 is the gender disparities. Women and girls are expected to prioritize household chores or marriage over education, making them most likely to drop out of education system. Other than social or cultural barriers, they face economic barriers such as limited resources. Students who identify as the third gender face discrimination and harassment from their peers, teachers, or administrators, which make it difficult for them to feel safe and included in the educational environment. To achieve SDG Goal 4, it is essential to prioritize inclusivity and equity in lifelong learning opportunities. This includes addressing the barriers faced by marginalized populations and promoting access to quality education. Educational institutions must be designed to accommodate diverse learning needs and have the resources to support students from all backgrounds. By applying the formula of inclusivity and equity in lifelong learning, we can ensure that everyone has access to educational opportunities they need to thrive and contribute to the society. With these thoughts, I invite the panel to make their introductory remarks. I request Professor Sungho Kang to begin the discussion with his introductory remarks.
Thank you. Thank you, Nisha. Your wonderful introduction. I'm from Korea, and I had experience in the Kyung University, the former academic field for 20 years. And since I being retired, I have been involved in a civil society organization for 10 years. And through the civil society, we are promoting informal, lifelong education. And based on my experience in the academic field and my experience in History NGO Forum, I'd like to share some of my ideas, some experience with you. Particularly this SDG, Sustainable Development Goals number 4. It refers to the lifelong education. Okay, in our previous the UN goals, MDG, or the Millennium Development Goals, is mostly for the education for all agenda, right? But the Sustainable Development Goals include lifelong learning and education, and when particularly I'm a Korean background, cultural and educational background. Korea is a good example of economic development and the political democratization, achievement of democratization, and the main factor of our this success in economy and the democracy is the education. Okay, so because Korea is the education, the enthusiasm in each family or our facilities are very well prepared so far. And but I think this is the new transitional period. I mean the formal education has been very well good in progress, but lifelong education, this is our new challenge. Okay, lifelong education, because the Korean society is changing in terms of our demographic shape, it's an aging society, okay? Aging society, large population after being retired, what their second, the life, how do they prepare for the second life? This is the big issue. Also, the young generation, the Korea is always really a very the education oriented like a society, but we do like we should change our somewhat mentality. I mean we should respect the children's their choice of their life, okay, choice of life. This is very important. And because in the Korea has very advanced in the like internet or the information technology, these days our new types of the education the institute is like the semi-formal education is like what we have different educational types, like a formal education and the semi-formal education. This is lifelong education institution of a higher education type. Let me just briefly give some good examples. Korea National Open University, okay? Korea National Open University by online. The Korea National Open University opened in 1972. The Korea National Open University is the first national remote university in Korea, and its headquarters is located in Seoul. This university has networks of local universities in 13 special cities and metropolitan cities. It's also the second remote university in the world after the UK Open University, and has more than 50 years of history. So the educational background of the broadcasting university is internationally recognized. And there are some features of this Korea National Open University. 90% of the, we call it KNOU, Korea National Open University, students work while attending the university. And university also provide a high quality education. And this university also, give the very favorable and reasonable tuition, the cost. The Korea National Open University's tuition is one-tenth of other conventional universities' tuition, okay, even in Korea. And also this university leading a lifelong learning society. So this Open University, Korea Open University's students' age ranges from teenage group, I mean in their 20s, and until to some 90s, okay, 90s, very various, the age group. And also Korea these days, they are very development of like a cyber university or remote university, okay, many universities. In this case, in Korea, cyber universities have increased 133% over the last 11 years since they were first established in 2001. As of the year 2022, I saw the statistics. There are 21 cyber universities in South Korea. So we can take advantage of all these technologies. So the cyber university, students, not only Korean students, but the overseas students, they can attend this university far away, okay, like, out of Korea. So this is one good technology. We can use it. And of course, non-formal education is spreading, non-formal education. I mean, the non-formal education refers to all structured learning activities conducted outside of school. It includes planned, systematic, and organized teaching course, the same as formal education, but is not confined to, not certified as an academic education and the degree by the government. Okay, so and in my case, my history and forum, since the 3 years ago, we have been engaged in like some program for global citizenship education, and in collaboration with our partners, overseas partners, particularly in ASEAN countries. Korea, we are more focused on East Asia, of course, in the China, Japan, Korea, but our relations not very favorable sometimes because of political, some reasons. Okay, but we extend our activities with Southeast Asia, ASEAN countries, and particularly Mekong countries. So we began our program. We call it the Mekong School for Youth. So Mekong means like 5 countries through the Mekong River: Thailand and Laos, Cambodia, Myanmar, and Vietnam. So we hold the youth program, and we are trying to organize this year another second occasion of the youth program here in Korea. So this is like a the formal education, but our partners, of course, they are some educational institutes or some NGOs. We try to organize in the future somewhat what's the main agenda, of course, in the Mekong region, and what is the most important agenda for youth, and for the global citizenship, and for the issue or agenda of East Asia. We would like to organize this the non-formal education, but would like to with our partners like Chiang Mai University or some other universities and other countries, would like to promote it like a substitute for some credits or something, because these days in Korea, university students, instead of the only school, university campus, the classes, if they do have the social service activities, the school acknowledge their credit or something. So we would like to implement these kinds of social program, and this is our idea. Okay, so I will keep on my discussion later. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Professor Sungho, for sharing your experiences of working in civil society and bringing to the conversation the idea of cyber university and international level collaborations to promote semi-formal learning and non-formal learning, facilitating lifelong learning for all, and providing students and adults with an opportunity to work and study at the same time while maintaining the quality of education and keeping the fee reasonable to enhance accessibility. Thank you so much. I now request Professor Putra to make the introductory remarks.
Thank you very much, Professor Nair. So for my introductory remarks, I would like to talk in the general perspective before I go with the example that has been done by Jindal Global University. So I think, as Professor Nair and also Professor Kang already mentioned, that SDG number 4 goals is about ensuring inclusivity and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for everyone. I agree that's one of the biggest challenges right now is gender disparities, but we could not also forget that is also for the past 3 years, how COVID-19 also affect the difficulties for children and also affect how the global learning crisis in the world. And I would like to talk particularly how then every country in the world, including within the countries, there is also university, which all of us right now are part of the university as well, and also academics, is that how then we can use interdisciplinary approach to that play an important role in tackling those issues. So, for example, let me start with then gender disparities and how it's going to be start with the problem of inequality and also inequity education. Those problems usually start or manifested from the stigma and prejudice, which how then people think and feel about a particular group, especially when it comes to vulnerable groups, like for example, like low-income communities or people with disabilities, that they maybe cannot have access to full education. Even though that, according to one of the international covenant, which is international covenant on economic, social, and economic rights, that right to education, it should be free for all. Well, even although that those particular article in the ICSER actually just right now is just mentioning that primary education should be free, but then there is also progressive introduction to free education to everybody. So in this case, how then higher education or university can taking a role into tackling this issue is that, and then how then the university can disseminate the idea against that. So tackling those stigma and prejudice will be one of them. I remember when on my first day when I joined OP Jindal Global University, there was an orientation for us, the new faculty members. And I was expecting the first day of the material that we will be receiving was about, how to be teaching university students or things like that. But apparently in the early session of the first day of my orientation as a new faculty member, it was about sexual harassment. It was about how to respect each other and all of those things, which is, I believe, one of the greatest example, one of the great things that has been done. So we know now how to act properly in this kind of situation, how to managing to communicate properly with our colleagues or students in this case. Another thing that I believe is also important is that in regards that university can help in disseminate the idea is that how then academic freedom is also one of them that have been acted by the university. In OP Jindal Global University, with more than hundreds of international faculty members, including me, and also that vary from more than 40 countries in the world, each of us has a freedom to introduce new courses, especially elective courses to the students, so they can learn more about a lot of things, not just particularly about, let's say, law in India or, human rights issue or human rights perspective from India, but, more global. Let's say for the comparative aspect, there is an Asian law courses as well. There is also about comparative disability law elective course as well. And it will be starting from there, how then we can disseminate that idea to the students, because inequality, as I said earlier, is start from misrecognition, and it's usually manifested in stigma and prejudice. And if we can reduce that, then we can also reduce the discriminatory action or discrimination that may be manifested in a policy, like formal policy or even law. In respect to that, we have to remember also what the university can also taking role in this is that providing in at least 4 aspects. The first one is about availability, which is going to be how the university can provide the facility in here, how the building, sanitation facilities, or in the context of the lifelong learning, is that there is a specific dedicated unit for lifelong learning for that matter. And also accessibility in respect that it should not be non-discrimination. OP Jindal Global University offer that there is a disability support committee or DSC, which usually students, whenever they feel or they can, if they think they identify them as a person with disability, mental or physical, they can register to the DSC committee in the early of the semester, and then they have a consultation session. They have counselor over there, which then going to be accommodating whether for their daily life in the university because they living here in a dormitory or hostel, also in the formal life as a student, whether you know how to access the material, how to communicate with the professor, how to getting accommodated in the terms of examination, midterm, or even a final examination. The third thing is about acceptability, how then every teaching materials, every idea that promote or teach by the professor should be relevant and culturally appropriate, and also using the interdisciplinary approach. For example, in regards of COVID-19 situation, COVID-19 maybe is a problem. The major or the core problem is on the public health, but there is also an aspect of psychological aspect as well. How students getting problem to study while they have had to went through it through an online learning. There is also part of the psychological aspect over there. So if we're not using interdisciplinary action or approach over there, it's hard for us university representative to tackling with those issues. And what I see or what I noticed so far working as a professor at OP Jindal Global University is that one of the ideas that is also sounded by our Vice Chancellor during the orientation is that the one building that's not divided into this is law school, this is school of public health, this is school of psychology, which one academic building. It's one of the ways to introduce how the interdisciplinary approach going to be teach to all of the students and also all of the academic element in the Jindal Global University. The last thing I would like to talk is about the adaptability, is that how we should be flexible with changes. One of the examples that have been provided by the OP Jindal Global University is that how during the early time of COVID-19 pandemic in May 2020, there was a program called a graduate research program for the university graduates in 2020, which during that time, most of the workplace are freezing their hiring and recruitment process. But through that program, all of the university graduates in 2020 had another chance, further chance to keep studying and also even working, getting paid through that program. So they can also not just studying and working, but also get mentored by the faculty members at OP Jindal Global University. I think it should be continue, of course, sustained in terms of that right to education should be respected, protected, and fulfilled. And that will be reaching as the ultimate goal of the SDG goal number 4. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Putra, for your introductory remarks and highlighting the issue of gender disparity within SDG Goal 4 and the possibilities of employing interdisciplinary approach to respond to these concerns, and sharing your own experience of the way institutions can adopt practices and policies that facilitate an effective response to curb such discrimination, particularly in the face of the pandemic that the world experienced. Thank you so much. I now request Professor Edward Peck to make his introductory remarks.
Thank you, and thank you for the invitation to contribute. In 2019, I was part of the panel which was asked by our government in England to look at the way in which higher education is funded, as our moderator said at the start. And this is something known as the OGAR report. It was published almost exactly 4 years ago. And the focus of our work was actually not on those people who do go to university, particularly at 18, but those people who don't go to university at 18, the other 50%, as we called it, and indeed those people who've never been to university, who are now adults and in work. And the focus of this was very aligned with SDG 4, particularly 4.3 around equal access, and 4.4 around the number of people with skills, particularly technical or vocational skills in the population. Now, to understand the move that the government's about to make in England, which is a real game changer around technical and vocational education, which is much more inclusive and equal, you just have to be reminded that, of course, in the UK, we have an income contingent loan system for both fees and for maintenance, which is where undergraduate students currently borrow the amount of fees that universities charge. They borrow that money effectively off the government, and then they pay it back when they can afford to do so. The threshold's around £25,000 a year salary. So it's called debt. It's not a debt, actually. It's an income contingent loan. And it means that a whole range of young people from less well-off backgrounds now feel confident in going to university because they know they have the resources to do it, both through fees and indeed for living costs through these loans. However, to date, you've had to borrow the amount for a full degree, a full 3-year degree, or if you do it longer than that, you have to really study in very large chunks of study. You can be part-time, but it's not very part-time. Now, the game changer in England, which is coming in 2025, which came out of the report that I was involved in writing, is that these loans are now going to be called a lifelong loan entitlement, which means at any point during your life, you can borrow money for fees and maintenance for modular study, for much smaller bite-size courses. And this will mean that all sorts of people who never went to university or might now choose not to go to university can enter into skills training, vocational training at university, at level 4 and above, in a much more gradual way in which they build their qualifications if they want the full qualification over a considerable period of time. And that, I think, will encourage a whole lot of people into higher education who haven't been before. And why that's really important in the UK is that we have a problem with the number of people who have level 4 and above qualifications. So lots of people have school level qualifications, they have level 3, but we have a large tranche of folk, particularly in poorer communities, who've never gone on to get those level 4, level 5, level 6 qualifications. And in my view, the lifelong loan entitlement is an absolute game changer for those people. Now, the challenge we face in some ways, though, is making sure that the study people can do is sufficiently large to be meaningful, but not so large that they can't actually engage with it on a modular basis. And of course, because it's a loan system that we operate, the loan system can only deal with a certain level of granularity of how bite-sized these modules can be. So in England, we're going to go for 30 credits, which is 300 hours notionally of learning, which is quite a lot. But we're trying to get a balance between the loan system being workable and having something that represents modular study, where the course has been broken up and we can study in a much more flexible way. Now, we have challenges in England around access, less so, but continuity and completion rates for sure. So we want to encourage more people in that other 50% to take up university education. But as the previous speaker was saying, well, the key challenge is making sure these students complete their course, whether it's one module or a full degree. And in England, we are now making far more use of student analytics. So we're introducing quite sophisticated ways of judging the way in which students are progressing. Are they engaging? Are they showing signs of other forms of challenge? We have good analytics. And crucially, we now have some interventions we can put in place to support students who we think may be having some difficulties. Now, there's a challenge about how evidence-based those interventions are, but that's getting better. And the challenge also, of course, is our student population, particularly as we encourage adults into higher education, is becoming ever more diverse. So how do you design a student support system that deals with that degree of diversity, from an 18-year-old doing a full-time degree to a 45-year-old doing one module of an engineering course because they want to upskill to get their next job? So I think that's a really important challenge that's been raised already. And in England, I think we're making good progress in thinking through what student support looks like for those students. Crucially, the way in which we get people, particularly adults, to engage in this education is to make it linked to their opportunity to either get a job or get a better job or to reskill in their current job. So the courses being selected for this modular education are absolutely focused on technical and vocational education. And certainly our experience at Nottingham Trent University is that if you get the offer right, particularly sensitive to the local economy, a very local economy, you can get adults to come back and do courses in engineering, particularly or computing, because they know there are companies in that community that need people with those skills. So it's crucial, I think, this is done at a local level. And talking about the benefits of education in the abstract, I think is fine. But for people who are adults who face real pressures around their income, their time, their caring responsibilities, you've got to make clear to them, and they can see a pathway from doing this course, taking this loan, and getting that job in their local community to help the growth of their local economy. So I'll probably leave my remarks there, and that's where we are in England.
Thank you, Professor Peck, for sharing your experience and also sharing with us some of the ideas that have been implemented from the Algar report with its focus on equal access, and for bringing into this conversation the idea of lifelong loan entitlement to pursue higher education. It is an interesting idea, and we would like to learn more about it as the discussion progresses today. And also, thank you for sharing with us some of the challenges that UK is facing with its ever-increasing diverse population of students, particularly in the context of lifelong learning and the importance of vocational education for adults. Thank you so much. With that, I would request Professor Nidhi S. Sabharwal to share her introductory remarks.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the invitation to contribute. So I will just quickly focus on the SDG and the role of higher education in as seen as a route for preparing global citizens equipped with the knowledge and skills to build a better world. So SDG, which aims to end poverty and hunger, protect the planet, and ensure prosperity for all. Higher education is seen as a route for preparing global citizens equipped with this knowledge and skills to build a better world. So among the 17 SDGs is the SDG 4, which we are focusing on, ensuring inclusive and quality education for all and promoting lifelong learning. And the transformative expectation from education is reflected in the target 4.7, which specifies education for global citizenship. Now, the Indian state also views higher education as a long-term social investment for promotion of economic growth, cultural development, equity, and social justice. Colleges and universities are increasingly being called upon to play a pivotal role in learning and refining of civic values and promoting global citizenship. In India, with having the second largest higher education system in the world, and in the context of a large share of age cohorts undergoing higher education in a massified era, equity and inclusiveness becomes a part of the social responsibility of higher education institutions. And the Indian states view diversity on college campuses as a transformative agent of that social change. Inclusiveness in teaching learning processes and equity in academic outcomes are viewed as important societal contributions of higher education institutions to reduce social inequalities and promote inclusive growth. Now, in a way of achieving diversity in numerical strengths and in academic outcomes, with acts of inclusion becomes an integral part of that service mission of the university. Now, in the context of South Asia more broadly, our research suggests that identification of groups belonging to the disadvantaged to target them in public policy has not been an easy task in many countries. South Asian countries are more diverse than other countries in the Asian region and countries on other continents. The source of the diversity can be religion, ethnicity, caste, and other factors. Our analysis indicates that mostly equity policies are either based on social factors or based on economic factors. However, they are not mutually exclusive categories of strategies, since they at times overlap. And it can be further seen that countries with higher level of diversity follow social criteria for equity policies. In contrast, those who are less diverse follow more economic criteria for targeting the disadvantaged. And at times, regional backwardness based on economic indicators has also been adopted. However, very often, social criterion is relied on to extend economic benefits, such as financial support to students and institutions. Now, in India, having a high degree of diversity, rely on social criteria as the basis for equity policies in higher education admissions for disadvantaged groups. The most common equity strategy followed is the affirmative action measures, constitutionally promoted and protected for the groups targeting students belonging to the disadvantaged group. So at the admission stage, these include a constitutionally guaranteed compulsory quota system, relaxation of age and scores to study programs, and at the entry level in the employment market as well. After admissions to higher education institutions, this also extends to remedial teaching, tutoring support, social care, and access to learning resources to improve the conditions of learning amongst the disadvantaged groups. Thank you. I will stop here with my introductory remarks, and I'll come back with some more later in the discussion. Thanks.
Thank you, Professor Sabharwal, for the introductory remarks and for highlighting the way higher education is seen as the root and a transformative intervention to prepare citizens for the global world, and bringing to forth the challenges that India is facing with it being the second largest education system, and the importance of promoting access and equity in access to reduce social inequality. With that, we would proceed to the first question that I have for the panel. And the question is, how can educational institutions address the barriers that marginalized populations such as low-income communities and people with disabilities face in accessing education? You can perhaps share the experiences or the policies and processes that your own institutions have put into place while addressing these barriers. I would request Professor Sungho Kang to please take this question.
Okay, thank you again. Okay, of course, our talk about the Korean case. Okay, Korean case. You know, Korea, some years in my generation, like 20 years or 30 years before, we have a gender issue, okay, gender issue, like kinds of discrimination, because this is Confucius society. Confucianism always emphasizes the man's role. But because Korea, the civil society movement is very active. And the women's, you know, like feminism or women's, this movement is very active. And these days in many universities, the particularly female students are almost the same as male students, and they are very outstanding in their achievements or something. So gender issue is not serious in terms of the education, as far as I know. But the problem is in our, SDG goal 4, inclusivity or equity. This approach. The problem is, I think, because Korea is very homogeneous Korean ethnic group, but these days it's changing, like migrant workers, migrant spouses. So we have, we call it multinational families. Okay, multinational families is increasing more than 2 million the families. And in my surrounding, myself, I saw many families. So particularly because of they are, even though the Korean government try to promote a policy, to help them, therefore their access to education or some facilities, but still I think our policy is sometimes emphasize Korean culture. They are more like assimilation of the Korean society. So I think we should change our some policy. I mean, more let's talk about global citizenship. We should understand more our migrant workers' culture. Their some family because we have international families, migrant spouses. Usually the problem is they are somewhat discriminated in their school because of the language barrier, or some their color, different colors or something. So how could you overcome this barrier? I mean, they are sometimes marginalized or sometimes discriminated in our society. Okay, I think I'm very concerned about this area. And that's why from the beginning, I mean, the more lower education, like elementary school or education, we should emphasize more somewhat global citizenship education, okay? Because my generation, I used to be taught we should be proud of our very ethnicity, I mean the homogeneous ethnic group. We are the one like ethnic group, something like that. But we should change our concept. I mean we should getting along with other different people. We should learn different culture. So particularly the young, generation, elementary school students, they should know how to get along with the other people. Okay, so if we need to change some textbook, I didn't, look at the elementary school textbook these days. Somewhat we should seriously change the textbook, improve textbook, and some more like interaction program. That's why I think our NGO or civil society, we have many kinds of lifelong learning programs or some social activities programs. That's why I hope our government should promote it or subsidize our civil society or NGOs for the implementation of these programs, okay? Because school cannot cover all of this in their formal education, okay? So this is my idea.
Thank you, Professor Kang, for sharing with us the way in which Korea is experiencing diversity with the migratory population, which has led to an increasing realization that there is a need to inculcate tenets of global citizenship and inclusivity through education and the intervention by the civil society in this entire process. I now request Professor Putra to respond.
Thank you for the question. So I think in regards that university role to overcome with the issue of low-income communities or people with disabilities or any other particular vulnerable groups in accessing education, higher education in this particular, the example that I believe has been done and still continuing done by Jindal Global University is that started from the admission process. So I know that Jindal Global University has collaboration with one of the, or even the largest in India about the management system, which is the no paper form. So it's, this software or this system indicating the admission process, all of the potential or prospective students for any elements or identification from any data input that could be a lot of them. So it will be, the university can be identified whether the student has disability status, whether the student come from low-income communities or low-income family, whether the students has particular gender, would like to be identified, nationality, caste, or religion, community. So that will be one of the way that since the start of the admission process of Jindal Global University has been done with that and still maintaining that process. Another thing that I believe also still doing by Jindal Global University is about widening access, because we right now have like 1:9 ratio for student body, and every year Jindal Global University increase the number of the seats for the admitted students. But of course, we have to keep maintaining that in terms of the maintaining the quality education as well. So that's why there are a couple of scholarships that will be helpful in terms of the students who gaining or accessing those access. For example, in law school itself, there is a Salary Jindal Outstanding Woman Scholarship. So scholarship for students who may come from low-income families or low-income community, but also can be accessed by women who also need the support for them who are going to studying or even practicing in the field of law. Every year, the student, at least in all of the programs at law school LLB program, they will get the 2 students. The scholarship will offer for 2 students. For the BA or BBA LLB program, there will be 2 students each, and also 2 students for the LLM program. And the range of the tuition fee or the financial support could be range from 10% to 75% tuition fees. And not just that, I believe right now we have almost half of the students at Jindal Global University is receiving a scholarship as well, which is one of the ways. So I think with that kind of elements that has been done by Jindal Global University is that it started from the admission process, how to maintain that, it's then continued by how the program and scholarship also offered to all students. So that will be all I think from me. Thank you.
Indeed, the admission process is a crucial stage to ensure diversity, and scholarships go a long way in ensuring equity in access. So thank you so much for that response. I request Professor Peck to share his thoughts.
Yeah, great, thank you. So I agree with the previous speaker. Much of this is about money and enabling the potential student to access routes to financing their studies. And my view is the English system around loans is a really good compromise between the taxpayer contribution and the student contribution, because the taxpayer has an interest in having a more educated community overall, and the student has the benefit of earning more money than non-students, non-graduates, as they pursue their careers. So it strikes me they should also make a contribution and pay back at least part of their loans. So I think that's crucial. For me, I understand the dialogue about creating global citizens, but if we're trying to encourage people from families who haven't been to university before to take out a loan, to develop their skills, as I said before, they've got to see a much more direct connection with having a better future, crucially, a better job as a nurse or an engineer. So I think we have to sell this to some of these communities as a way to bettering their lives and their families' lives. Now, once you've got a secure job and a secure home, it strikes me you're in a much better position to become a better global citizen. And I think it's that way round. We have a lot of work in England on decolonialisation, trying to look at the aspects of our syllabus and the way in which we might connect with our students which have their roots in some aspects of our colonial past. We have a lot of charters which expect certain standards of behaviour, for instance, the Race Equality Charter, which is nationally monitored. Despite all of that, we still have some challenges, particularly around the attainment of Black students. And by Black, I mean African, African Caribbean, African American students. And of course, what we find with those students is not just that they come from a particular community, but they're also often the first generation of their family to go to university. They probably come from poorer backgrounds, as shown by having free school meals when they went to school. So we're having to look at the intersectionality, the multiple factors that mean that some of our student groups do less well than other student groups. And University UK have not yet cracked that problem, but we're working really hard to try and reduce the gaps in attainment between particularly Black student groups and other student groups. So I wouldn't want to pretend that in England we've got this entirely sorted, because we haven't. That's a big challenge for us, one we're taking very seriously.
Right, indeed, intersectionality, while it is important as it enriches the educational process, also sort of proves to be a challenge, and institutions have to constantly gear up and come up with processes and policies so that everybody feel included as the education is made accessible to them. Thank you for your response. I now request Professor Sabharwal to share her thoughts.
Yeah, thank you. So as I mentioned, in India, having a high degree of diversity rely on social criteria as the basis for equity policies in higher education admissions for the disadvantaged group. Equity strategies at the admission stage has developed in India through constitutionally directed compulsory quota system, which the institutional managers have to implement at the institution level. The quota system is applicable to the public institution. This Constitution of India guarantees 15% reservation in admission to higher education and in employment for the scheduled caste group, 7.5% for the scheduled tribes, which was implemented in 1950. In 1987, an additional quota of 27% was extended to other backward classes in education and in jobs, and this is within the caste system fold. And while India has relied on social factors initially to identify the disadvantaged groups, the basis of equity policies was expanded to economic factors later. So in 2019, the amendment to the Constitution included a 10% reservation of seats in educational institutions and in jobs to economically weaker sections within the general category, which is the non-disadvantaged group. So therefore, today, the disadvantaged groups in India are broadly classified into 4 categories for equity measures: the scheduled castes, which are the former untouchables; the scheduled tribes, which are similar to indigenous groups in other countries; the other backward classes, which are lower in the caste hierarchy; and the economically weaker section. The non-disadvantaged social groups are termed as general category. So equity measures at the admission stage include reservation or quota seats, which now cover nearly 59.5% of the admissions in institutions of higher education. It needs to be added that some of the provisional governments at the state level follow quota system in admission to higher education institutions and in the labor market, which will exceed this 59.5% level as well. Apart from the quota in admissions, the government, both central at the federal level and at the provisional levels have introduced financial incentives to encourage participation of the disadvantaged in institutions of higher education. Now, these measures include fee concessions, provision of scholarships, and hostel facilities.
Thank you. Indeed, the equity strategy of quota is an important measure taken by India to promote access to education. And we can think of several ways through which perhaps more of such action should be taken to respond to the SDG goal 4 in particular. My next question to the panel is, what kind of initiatives can be taken by higher education institutions to address gender disparity in education, particularly against girls and the third gender? Professor Kang, I request you to share your thoughts. Professor Kang, you may...
Sorry. Okay, Professor Nisha, you mean this second question is in connection with gender or the discrimination? What something?
That's correct. That is correct.
Okay. Yeah, so still in Korea, maybe some the higher education, no discrimination in terms of like gender, what the opportunities for genders, but the job, okay, when they getting a job or when they stay in their job, okay, maybe there will be still discrimination, okay. But the Koreans, the economic structure is changing. I mean, in our previous industry, mostly like hardware is more important, hardware, but now it's mostly software. So I think it remains to be seen, but we needed a little more time, and particularly in case of Korea, of course, I traveled to Southeast Asian countries, like, already I plan to have some project in Cambodia or some other countries. We still have some problem in that, these other countries. But in case of Korea, the gender issue, I think still we need more education, okay? Education is very important, okay? And Korea is, in terms of the gender improvement of gender equality, is quite a good, in good progress, okay? And it's changing very fast, And that's why I emphasize our education. Is really, we should give very, very proper education to our young generation. And what is the role of each gender, okay? What is the collaboration, okay? Something like that. And the civil society or NGO, okay? Out of this campus or the formal education, they can learn how to, the practice like this or the experience of like gender equality. I think that is one way, okay?
Thank you. Well, it is very encouraging to note that you're not facing gender discrimination, or there is no concern of gender equality to to a large extent in the education system there. Now I would quickly ask Professor Putra to share his views.
Yes, thank you, Professor Nair. So I'd like to make it brief. So I think one of the way that has been done by OP Jindal Global University as well is that from the one that I mentioned earlier about how us ex-faculty member has this perspective or freedom to over elective courses, and that is one of the way to reducing misrecognition into work about the problem on gender disparities. Last semester I talked law and justice in the globalizing world, and one of the particular topic is about third world international approach and also international law from the perspective of feminism. Is that how then in that particular topic me and my student discuss about how gender disparities that facing by women, especially if they come from the developing countries, which is different with the problem for women from developed countries. Another courses or which is concept syllabus that has feminism perspective is and how we see the problem of human rights from the women's perspective as well. I think it's even though it's one of the initial start, but it is going to be, I believe, resolving the problem about the stigma and prejudice, because one of the big problem from the misrecognition that usually led to the discriminatory action. So yeah, that would be from me.
Yes, that's an important observation. I request Professor Peck to please share his thoughts.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm afraid I have to leave after making these comments for another meeting. We don't have an issue about women accessing higher education in England. There are still some concerns expressed by female students about sexual harassment and other forms of sexual behaviour, which are sometimes inappropriate. I guess that's true of the population, but we still have it in universities. In fact, women do better when it comes to continuation. They do better when it comes to completion. They do better when it comes to the classification of their degrees. The first point at which women students do less well than men students in the English system is when they go and get their first job. So more men still get a graduate level job when they graduate than women. So the discrimination actually lies more in society, I would suggest, than in universities. And we'll have a lot of work to do, I think, to overcome that broader context in which discrimination against women takes place. So thank you for inviting me. I'm sorry I have to leave, but it's been a very enjoyable conversation.
Thank you so much for joining and sharing your thoughts on the question. Now, I will now request Professor Sabharwal to share her views.
Yeah, thank you. In India, women have made substantial gains in accessing higher education. As a result of faster increase in their participation, India achieved gender parity in access with equal number of male and female students in higher education at the national level. And in some states, provinces, in fact, women are more in number than men in many classrooms, higher education classrooms. Gender-based equality commitments in education at the federal level have taken multiple forms. These include right to free and compulsory elementary education and universalization of secondary education, which plays an important role in increasing the number of girls eligible for seeking admission to higher education. Legal laws such as those prohibiting child marriage, coupled with legally supported right to non-discriminatory access to education, the RTE 2009 provision, potentially loosened societal norms on early marriage and translated in increasing chances of adolescent girls completing their secondary education and enrolling in higher education. Importantly, gender has been a focus of affirmative action measures in public policies in India to equalize access to higher education opportunities. So in addition to subsidized public higher education, scholarship schemes for women, women-only colleges, and special provisions in reservation of seats in public higher education institutions have all helped to increase women's enrollment in higher education, including those from the socially excluded groups. However, the problem lies in terms of inequalities in higher education access to choice, the choice aspect of higher education. Gender parity of enrollment disguises many ways in which gender acts as a limiting factor for young people's choice and aspiration, not least in relation to choice of course and location and type of higher education. From our studies, we find gender inequalities in schooling pathways in terms of medium of instruction and the choice of subjects, with underrepresentation of women in STEM and professional subjects vis-a-vis the social sciences or general courses. That is really the issue of gender inequalities, which we need to address, which are more influenced by patriarchal norms as well as gender regimes applicable in the society.
Thank you, Professor Sabharwal. You have made some very, very important points. Unfortunately, we do not have the scope and with respect to time to engage in a deep discussion. In fact, before we close, I would like to quickly take one question from the audience. And the question is, how can higher education institutions engage with the wider community to promote lifelong learning opportunities? If you can quickly share one example of such a possibility with us. The question is open to panel.
Okay.
Yes, please.
Yeah, higher education engage in the wider, the world. I think the particularly like in case of Korea, I already mentioned our demographic shape is changing. I mean, the elders, there are many elders after being retired or still before retiring. So the higher education, particularly universities, they are providing, we call it lifelong education. Some others, even though they are still working, they need more like some certificate. It depends on their personal pursuit or the job's requirement. So this university, they provide some like re-education program. This is one. Also, the other group, after being retired, they don't worry about their living expenses, but what is the value of life? Okay, seeking value of life, or something like a philosophy or some art or something. So this, particularly, I used to work at Kyung University. We established like something like a lifelong education institute. Okay, so they provided. So the many elders or the middle-aged group, they enjoy learning and association, society with the other members. So I think because also the students, the candidates are decreasing. I mean, the high school students are decreasing. We should focus on more like in terms of our universities, strategy. We should more pay attention to this world. This is more like the people in our society, and this is the benefit for our citizens. Okay.
Right. Thank you. Thank you so much, Professor Kang, for answering the question. I would like to thank all our distinguished panelists for joining us from across the world and for sharing their thoughts. I would also like to thank the members of the audience for raising pertinent questions. Thank you so much all for joining. Please do continue to engage with us in the next thematic session, which will begin at 3 p.m. on the theme of virtual versus physical status report on hybrid education. Thank you again and have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.